What if I told you that one of the most powerful criminal organizations in history didn't start with guns, drugs, or money, but with farmers asking for protection? The Italian Mafia isn't just a criminal group, it's a system, a culture, and for a long time, a shadow government that controlled entire regions of Italy, and later, much of the world. This is the entire history of the Italian Mafia, from medieval Sicily, to Hollywood gangsters, to modern-day billion-euro criminal empires. To understand the Mafia, you need to understand Sicily. For centuries, Sicily was invaded and ruled by foreign powers. Governments came and went, laws changed, rulers changed, but one thing stayed the same. Ordinary people didn't trust the state. The government was distant, corrupt, or simply absent. So when disputes happened, when land needed protection, when justice was required, people didn't go to the authorities. They hired local strongmen. At first, these men were protectors. They guarded farms, enforced contracts, and settled conflicts. They filled the gap left by a weak government. But over time, something changed. These protectors realized that fear was more profitable than loyalty. Protection slowly turned into extortion. You no longer paid them because you wanted safety. You paid them to avoid danger. Pay us or else. That was the birth of the Mafia. By the 1800s, these groups had evolved into organized, secret societies with strict rules and rituals. Respect was everything. Loyalty to the family came before loyalty to the state. And above all else, there was Omertà, the code of silence. Talking to the police wasn't just betrayal, it was a death sentence. The Mafia was not chaos, it was organized. There were bosses, underbosses, and soldiers. They controlled land, influenced elections, decided business deals, and enforced their own version of justice. When Italy finally unified as a country in the 19th century, the Mafia was already deeply rooted, especially in Sicily. The new Italian government was weak, inexperienced, and completely unprepared to deal with an organization that had been operating in the shadows for generations. And the Mafia took advantage of that. Most people think of the Mafia as one single organization. That's not true. In reality, there are several powerful groups. The most famous is Cosa Nostra, the Sicilian Mafia, highly organized, hierarchical, and brutally efficient when challenged. Then there's the Camorra, based in Naples, less centralized, more chaotic, and often more violent, operating through street gangs and constant power struggles. And finally, the 'Ndrangheta from Calabria, quieter, more secretive, and today, the richest and most powerful of them all. While the world focused on Sicily, the 'Ndrangheta quietly took control of international drug trafficking, especially Europe's cocaine trade. Sometimes, the most dangerous organizations are the ones you hear the least about. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, millions of Italians emigrated to the United States in search of a better life, and the Mafia went with them. In cities like New York, Chicago, and New Orleans, Italian criminal groups formed inside immigrant communities. At first, they offered protection and support, but soon, it became about power and profit. Then came Prohibition. Alcohol was banned across the United States, but demand exploded, and the Mafia saw the opportunity of a lifetime. Smuggling alcohol, bribing officials, running speakeasies. Organized crime became a massive business. This era created legendary figures like Al Capone and Lucky Luciano, and powerful organizations like the Five Families of New York. The Italian Mafia had officially gone global. Back in Italy, the state was finally preparing to fight back. For decades, judges, journalists, and politicians who opposed the Mafia were threatened or murdered. Witnesses were too afraid to speak. Entire regions lived in fear. But in the 1980s, two men changed everything: Giovanni Falcone, Paolo Borsellino. They treated the Mafia not as folklore or tradition, but as a criminal organization. They led the Maxi trial, prosecuting hundreds of mafiosi at once and exposing the Mafia's inner structure. For the first time, the Mafia was truly challenged. The response was brutal: bombings, assassinations, terror attacks. Both Falcone and Borsellino were murdered in 1992. Italy was shaken. Instead of surrendering, Italy pushed back harder than ever. New laws were passed. Life sentences were enforced. Mafia assets were seized. Witness protection programs expanded. Legendary bosses like Salvatore, Toto, Rina were arrested. The old-school Mafia, loud, violent, and untouchable, began to collapse. But the Mafia didn't disappear. It adapted. Today's Mafia doesn't look like the movies. No public executions, no flashy suits, no dramatic speeches. Instead, it operates quietly, through legal businesses, construction, waste management, money laundering, international drug trafficking, especially the 'Ndrangheta, which now controls a massive portion of Europe's cocaine market. The modern mafia doesn't want attention, it wants stability, it wants profit. In many ways, it behaves less like a gang and more like a multinational corporation, and that may be more dangerous than ever. Why this story matters? The Italian mafia isn't just history, it's a warning about what happens when governments fail, when justice is weak, and when fear replaces trust. The mafia didn't rise because people were evil. It rose because it was useful, and that's why it survived for centuries. Because power doesn't disappear, it adapts.